Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about J.K. Dobbins, and then we're going to talk about some draft rumors and stuff that's kind of building up right now. Bucky Brooks released an article detailing his top 5 rookies by position, so we'll talk about the fantasy relevant ones. Yesterday, Daniel Jeremiah had a 2-hour conference kind of just talking about what he's heard from some GMs. So we're going to talk about some takeaways from that. We're going to talk about some visits. We're going to talk about Bill Belichick's appearance on the Pat McAfee show yesterday as well, talking about what he kind of displayed in that about the draft as well. So basically a nice little draft talk today, as next week is round 1 of the NFL draft. It is getting closer and closer. So exciting stuff building in the football world. Exciting stuff about to happen on Wake and Take. So go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, everyone in the chat. Good to see you, Jamie, Management, Applied, T-Real. Good to see you guys all this morning. Happy you're in the chat. Happy you're tuning in. And I'm sure you're happy to talk about some football, to listen to some football talk. We'll start with J.K. Dobbins, as there's not much really to say here. You guys know, as we knew, basically, that J.K. Dobbins would probably be going to the Chargers. I think it was about a month ago. He visited with them. We already know they had Greg Roman. They brought in Gus Edwards. It just made a ton of sense for the Chargers to sign J.K. Dobbins, reuniting him with his coach, reuniting him with his former backfield mate, Gus Edwards, on a team that wants to have a pretty decent rushing attack. And if J.K. Dobbins can stay healthy, they've got it. They have the 1-2 punch now. I mean, I know it's a budget as hell 1-2 punch, but we've seen a ton of explosiveness from J.K. Dobbins over the years, and really it's just been his injury history. Now, he is, of course, now coming off an Achilles injury. Those are very hard to recover from. At the running back position, you do lose some explosiveness. So really it's just going to be, how can he return post-injury? You know, and I think even if he has 80% of what he had, I think that's still a pretty decent running back if he can stay on the field. So I like this backfield. I like this J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards backfield. And there's still some potential that they add one more rookie, probably later. I will say, I think that this signing means that the Chargers probably will not be getting Blake Corum. I think that was a long shot anyway, to be honest, just because of how early they are in their rounds. And maybe early third is probably where they were looking with him, but they definitely weren't going to use their second round pick on him. So I don't know if that was necessarily going to happen anyway. Definitely could have. Definitely seemed more likely before this. But I think the Chargers are trying to kind of put together, duct tape this team together almost, and try to make it just a halfway good team next year, and see what they can do, and then maybe build upon that rushing attack. But I think that Greg Roman still believes in J.K. Dobbins, and I think Greg Roman still believes in Gus Edwards, and ultimately that's why they're the backfield duo here in Los Angeles. Jim Harbaugh trusts Greg Roman a ton. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but 2 days ago on the Los Angeles Chargers YouTube and just their social media in general, they did a whole little kind of mini documentary about Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. They're both at an RV camp on the beach right now, and have been really this whole offseason, kind of just broing it out together. They have their own RVs, but they're at the same RV park, and kind of just hanging out at nights, doing the whole thing, living the dream, really. So they've got a great relationship. They really, really do. And I just think that we've got the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards backfield like we had in Baltimore, but in Los Angeles for, a fraction of the price, given both of them have gotten older, and J.K. Dobbins in particular has a pretty significant injury history. But again, we've seen a ton of efficiency from him. We've seen great performances from J.K. Dobbins. So if he can be even 80% of himself, I really do like this backfield. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I guess the question, right, is, how much would you give to acquire this player? Would you acquire this player? And my answer would be, I would, if I'm getting J.K. Dobbins, and this is just me, this is just a me thing. I don't know how many of you are out there, but I have to have a whole backfield. It pains me to no end to not have my handcuff or a backfield duo mate. I think there's some exceptions, right? If you have Christian McCaffrey, I'm not going to, get upset that I don't have Elijah Mitchell or whatever. But if I have, say, my favorite example, I have Brian Robinson, I would not go into the season without Austin Eckler. I want both those guys. And that's kind of how I feel about this J.K. Dobbins situation. If I'm going to get J.K. Dobbins, I think I'm also going to have to go out to get Gus Edwards just so I can feel comfortable, because I'm not sure what each one's role is going to be, but I do think that they can kind of combine together to be a decent flex piece. And of course, with some injury upside as well for either one of those. So that's kind of how I'd look into the situation. I like a fourth round pick for Dobbins, and probably also like a fourth for Gus Edwards. Like, I don't want to give a lot. And maybe I would like be kind of like, I don't know, like downgrade a running back or something and just like try to get these guys as throw-ins. But I don't think that either one, J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, is worth a true amount of value. Maybe a late third in single quarterback leagues, fourth in Superflex, I think is probably where my head is at. I think that's where my head is at right now. So that's the J.K. Dobbins situation. Head into the Chargers. They've got the backfield. Now let's talk about what you guys actually came here to talk about today. What I came here to talk about today, and that is the NFL draft. Lots of different stuff building up around the scenes. I mentioned Bucky Brooks just released his top 5, so we'll talk about that in a second. But I also want to talk about some takeaways from Daniel Jeremiah, some takeaways from Bill Belichick's appearance on the McAfee show, as well as a couple visits. So we'll start with the visits that are happening today. Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler are scheduled to visit with the New York Giants. And this just tells us again that the Giants are probably looking at a backup quarterback if they are going to get one. If we'll remember, we can go back to the the Drake May Pro Day, where the Giants it was the same day as Michael Penix's Pro Day, and the Giants were over at the Michael Penix Pro Day and not the Drake May Pro Day. Kind of just signifying that they're not actually really in the top QB market. And then now having meetings with Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix, I think kind of solidifies that. And I like the Spencer Rattler potential landing spot for the Giants. You guys know this. I am not a Spencer Rattler really believer at all. I think he's fine. He seems like a good dude. But he did not impress me at all at the Senior Bowl. He was not really impressive in college. He's undersized. It just has a lot of mechanical issues. So I think that he's a good backup. And I don't mind him being a Danny Dimes backup and maybe just a little bit of a project. I mean, Brian Daboll did well with Josh Allen. Now, of course, that's Josh Allen. Spencer Rattler is nowhere near Josh Allen, not even close. I would put them in multiple different stratospheres, which isn't even a hot take. Even how low I am on Spencer Rattler, that's not even a hot take. But either way, that's what they're doing. Again, just the kind of thing to take away from that is that the New York Giants are in the backup quarterback market. So I'm just going to say it again. I said it Monday. You can buy some Daniel Jones, guys. You really can. We talked about it. Jamie in the chat said that they couldn't even get a third-round pick for their Daniel Jones. So you can get a probably starting quarterback for a third-round pick right now in Superflex leagues. That's a steal. I know it's crazy to say buy Daniel Jones, but I really think you should do it. The next visit that's happening today is Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels will be visiting with the Vikings later today, which kind of brings home the point again that the Vikings are still in the market to trade up. As you guys know, I am kind of still thinking that they'll stay put with their picks. I think another team is going to end up offering a little bit more than they can. And I just think that the Vikings don't need one of these top tier quarterbacks. I really do think that the Vikings would do really, really good with a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix. And that's kind of what I just hope they do. But of course, hearing that the rumors that they're tied to Drake May, tied to Jaden Daniels does, of course, lend some credence to the fact that they could trade away both of their first round picks this year to move up and make a true splash move at quarterback. And that would just be spectacular. I don't think I want Jaden Daniels in the Vikings system, but it wouldn't be terrible. I mean, we saw Josh Dobbs look pretty good for a little bit there. And he's basically just super Josh Dobbs. So either way, that's who he's visiting with today. Kind of cool stuff. We'll see what happens with the Vikings. So excited for the draft, guys. I just so excited for the draft. Shout out Theo in the chat, by the way, getting ready for the draft as well. I know he is. I'm sure Theo is every single day right now. Theo, you can send me an email to confirm this if you don't mind, but I'm sure every single day he's just kind of looking at his watch for Draft House. I just know it. I know it because all of us here at Player Profiler are grinding so hard right now just to get ready for this Draft House and making sure everything is in order. We are all just, I'm talking like it is insane. The kind of, like the memes of like the inside SpongeBob's brain where everyone's just running around like a filing cabinet stuff and everything's on fire. That's kind of how it feels right now as we get ready for this awesome trip next week. So I'm sure Theo, our head of content over there, is just hoping and praying that it'll just get here already. It's just It is we're having some fun, but also, kind of grinding out here. But that's what it's all about. We are so excited for the Draft House. Shout out Jamie. The Player Profiler Draft House is the best thing on the internet, and that is so very true. And this year's in particular is going to be something truly, truly spectacular. So make sure you tune into our Draft House coverage next week. All right, so that is kind of what I've got for you in terms of like the like kind of NFL draft news. Let's go ahead and hop right in to this Bucky Brooks thing. So he released a top 5 by position for this year's NFL draft, and it's pretty interesting. And the reason I wasn't going to share it at first, just because I was like, well, what could really be different at the top 5 by position? But he did something really cool, as you'll see when we get down to the wide receivers. He split them into like wide receivers and slot wide receivers. So really we get a top 10 when it comes to the wide receiver position. So it's very, very cool. Check this out over at NFL.com. Bucky Brooks, obviously an insider. That's the stuff we're looking for here. So his top 5 quarterbacks are as follows. You can see it on the screen. It is Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy in that order. I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit too. That looked kind of small for you guys. Not many hot takes here. I know that obviously putting Michael Penix over JJ McCarthy is a hot take based on the media coverage right now. But I mean, I think we can kind of all agree that Michael Penix, at least before all of this NFL draft hype, was ahead of JJ McCarthy and still probably has a higher ceiling than JJ McCarthy. So I don't hate this take at all. Michael Penix certainly profiles as a really solid NFL quarterback, and with the right landing spot could be something special. And I think that while all the hype is there for JJ McCarthy, and I love JJ McCarthy, I think he has a very high floor. I am very curious about what actually happens with his landing spot and draft capital. I think that things could change significantly if it doesn't end up being a top 10 and especially not a top 5 type pick for him. So otherwise, I mean, everyone is just going to have their own takes between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And I think it makes sense to put Jaden Daniels here because he's the Heisman. I do really think, though, I know that the stuff right now, as we talk a little bit later with the Daniel Jeremiah stuff, is that Jaden Daniels is locked into the Commanders. That's what a lot of people are saying here right now. But I think Drake May just being that much younger than Jaden Daniels, being a redshirt sophomore versus a 6-year senior, I think will kind of draw some teams to want Drake May. And I still do believe that the Commanders are kind of looking at Drake May and viewing him as their second prospect. But we'll kind of see how that plays out. Not much to talk about with the quarterbacks. The Michael Penix thing is the hottest take here, but I don't hate it at all. I think it's a reasonable take. I really, really do. And his keep an eye on players, of course, Bo Nix. And this is true. I don't understand really how Bo Nix has fallen out of the Michael Penix tier because they both have they're literally like the kind of the same thing. The super seniors, the hyper productive last year from the Pac-12, transfer out of college they weren't very special at, disappointing at the Senior Bowl, pretty good pro day, decent performance at the combine, and yet everyone is kind of drawing Michael Penix, a tier above Bo Nix, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think that they should be in the same tier. I have Penix ahead of Nix, but it's close. I think it's very, very close. So just kind of something that I found a little bit surprising when you look at the quarterback prospects. So here are his running back rankings. His top 5 running backs are Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, and Will Shipley. This is another one that I don't hate at all. Of course, now here at Player Profiler, we have Trey Benson first, but that's really just because of his insane athleticism, which is what we don't have for Jonathan Brooks. So I think it makes sense to have Jonathan Brooks as your RB1. And I think in my head, he's kind of my RB1. That's the person I am keeping my eye on the most for the draft. He definitely has the highest chance to skyrocket. And if he's the first running back drafted, he will be everyone, including Player Profiler's #1 rookie running back, even with all the athleticism that we have for Trey Benson. I think the draft capital is going to play a big part in how we rank these running backs. So I really do think whoever goes first is who we're going to rank first. And I still kind of believe it's going to be Jonathan Brooks to the Cowboys. I really, really like that landing spot. Which then, of course, Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, both of them were just fantastic at the combine. One of the combine's biggest risers, both of them really. So it makes sense for them to be 2 and 3 and Blake Corum behind them. I imagine when he put this together, it's like kind of a 3-way tie for #2. I think that Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, and Blake Corum are all really, really close. But I understand putting Benson and Wright ahead of Corum just because of the explosiveness and the athleticism and what they can bring as a multifaceted running back to the next level. Blake Corum has a little bit of that, but definitely profiles a little bit less so of an explosive threat than a Trey Benson or Jalen Wright. So number 4 makes sense. And then number 5, Will Shipley. This is not necessarily a hot take, but it's one that I think most people probably have him around here. I guess I just like to see it. I'm very, very curious to see what happens with Will Shipley. This is the guy that's now being compared to Christian McCaffrey all over the place, pass catching running back. So we'll see what happens with Will Shipley. I don't hate him there at number 5. I think that arguably it's him or Braylon Allen right now. I would probably put Braylon Allen just because I'm that type of running back fan. I'm more of a power running back guy. I'm old school, I guess. But I don't hate the Will Shipley pick. Which brings up, and then Bucky Irving's his running back to keep an eye on. And that's kind of true as well. Very good season at Oregon last year, but, didn't quite do enough at the combine, kind of made him a faller. Which brings us to wide receivers. And this is where, everyone is very different. Everyone's different. And you already know my take. I am very mad and disgusted that Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't everyone's wide receiver 1. I don't get it. But it doesn't matter because Bucky Brooks does have Marvin Harrison Jr. as his wide receiver 1. And actually it's Rome Odunze as his wide receiver 2, with Neighbors coming in 3rd, with Brian Thomas and Keon Coleman right behind him. I don't like the Keon Coleman hype. I really don't. I just don't. I don't know what it is. I really don't get it. Not that great at the combine. Decent tape, but nothing like too special. I think that he's going to have to get the right landing spot to be good. So I don't like Keon Coleman at number 5. I would just put Adonai Mitchell, especially since he's been valuing athleticism a ton in these kind of things. So I would put Adonai Mitchell there, especially if you're going to rank Brian Thomas. You might as well throw Adonai Mitchell up in there. And then, kind of just the argument comes between Odunze and Neighbors, but I am buying this Odunze hype as just a smooth operator, really, really good route running wide receiver. I think a team will be very happy to have Rome Odunze, and I don't hate him at number 2. I think that Malik Neighbors, of course, has the highest ceiling out of all 3 of these wide receivers, but, you can't just talk about the ceiling when it comes to ranking these wide receivers, especially when this is, at the end of the day, this is kind of an NFL rankings thing, not necessarily a fantasy football rankings thing. And so I do think, I'm just going to say it, I do think that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze are better NFL wide receiver prospects than Malik Neighbors. I just do. Like, if I were an NFL team, those are the 2 wide receivers I would pick. Now, of course, I get it for fantasy football. The ceiling is very tantalizing for Neighbors, but I don't know. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze are a bit more of a prospect that could come in and immediately produce and just be a really, really good wide receiver for your team. Even if it's maybe not a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, but still like a Larry Fitzgerald, you can't complain about that at all. And so I like those types of wide receivers for sure. Matt Waldman has Odunze and Neighbors over MHJ, and it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting. I can't wait to see what happens with Marvin Harrison Jr. On draft night, but also just in general, really just in general. So that's his top 5 wide receivers. He says keep an eye on Troy Franklin, and that is true. I think with the right landing spot, he could be something. And again, like Bucky Irving, pretty decent season at Oregon. It seems he likes Oregon because Bucky Irving, Bo Nix, and Troy Franklin are all the players to keep your eye on. All of them produced well, but haven't had the greatest kind of pre-draft hype process. So anyway, we've now led to the slot receivers, and this is where I get a little upset. I get a little upset here, but it's okay. Ladd McConkey, slot receiver number 1. I think that's fair for sure. Arguable, I think, with Roman Wilson, and it looks like there's even a little bit of a tier break here. So Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, and then there's like an awkward space before it gets to Malachi Corley and Malik Washington. All 5 of these wide receivers, by the way, I really do like. I think Malik Washington is someone that's being slept on a ton. He led college football in receptions last year, or was it, or maybe also receiving yards. Either way, really, really good season from him last year in terms of just as a receiver. Malachi Corley, the guy who's being compared to Deebo Samuel, you absolutely love to see it. And then I'm really only upset because I think Roman Wilson and Ladd McConkey are the same player. And Roman Wilson has more college production, similar combine profile, and looked better at the Senior Bowl. So I have Roman Wilson ahead of Ladd McConkey if I'm an NFL team. If I'm an NFL team, I'm probably drafting Ladd McConkey first for special teams. But I just think Roman Wilson is a better wide receiver than Ladd McConkey is. And so I don't understand why he's 3rd, even behind Ricky Pearsall, who again also is profiling like a really good wide receiver. Looked great at the combine, looked really, really good at the Senior Bowl. In fact, looked so good he didn't even finish it. His agent pulled him out. But still, I don't know about Ricky Pearsall. He hasn't necessarily put it together at the college level. And he rubbed me the wrong way at the Senior Bowl. I'll just say that. He rubbed me the wrong way when I interviewed him. Something doesn't seem quite right about just him. It doesn't, I don't know. That's bad process probably, but that's what I felt when I saw him. I was like, I don't know. He doesn't strike me as an NFL player. He really doesn't. But either way, solid top 5. I love all of these wide receivers. I think all 5 of these, Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Malachi Corley, Malik Washington, are going to be very good picks in our rookie drafts. I think all 5 of these guys are going to earn roster spots and probably some decent volume on whatever offense takes them. I think that all 5 of these guys are true NFL players that will make a roster and play regardless of landing spot. So I love these. I love those guys. And his player to keep an eye on is Jacob Cowing, another player I like a lot as well. Pretty solid Senior Bowl. He's just really undersized. Like Tank Dell is undersized. Jacob Cowing is even more undersized than that, with less of the production, but still very, very smooth route runner with really solid hands, and also could jump really high. I remember he made a really spectacular catch at the Senior Bowl, kind of just jumped up and grabbed it and climbed the ladder for it, despite being like 5'7" and maybe even 5'6". This dude was small. But either way, definitely I like keeping an eye on him, which leads us to Brock Bowers, Jatavian Sanders, Cade Stover, Theo Johnson, and AJ Barner at tight end. I mean, pretty chalky. I would put Ben Sinnott in here, probably over Cade Stover even. I think that I would probably go Brock Bowers, Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, then Cade Stover if I were making my own list. But of course, Bucky Brooks has Ben Sinnott as his tight end to keep an eye on. I just like Sinnott a lot. He's a tight end that played basketball most of his life and then started playing football in college. Really, 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 really good agility drills at the combine. Really, really impressive at the Senior Bowl as well. I think Ben Sinnott is definitely a tight end to keep your eye on. I like him a lot. So those are the top 5 at the positions that matter for our fantasy football team by Bucky Brooks. Thank you for putting that together, Bucky. I think this is a great list. And yeah. So now let's go ahead and talk about Daniel Jeremiah's conference call. Yesterday, Daniel Jeremiah had a 2-hour conference call answering questions on Zoom and stuff, just kind of about his drafting process and everyone he's talked to, what he's learned from interviews with owners and coaches and stuff. And NFL.com writer Eric Edholm went through and gave us 5 takeaways from the conference call that we can talk about here. So first is, what is Washington's plan? So as we know, that's kind of a hot topic right now. What quarterback will the Washington Commanders pick? Basically, anyone you ask right now is going to say Jayden Daniels, which makes sense, of course, being the Heisman winning quarterback. But in this, Daniel Jeremiah said, in talking to coaches and executives around the league, they're likely overwhelmingly convinced that this pick is going to be Jayden Daniels. I like Jayden Daniels a lot. I like all of these 3 quarterbacks. And that seems to be the expectation from folks around the league. But again, anybody that said they know exactly what Washington is doing is lying, because I don't think Adam is saying a word, which is true. And it's something I'll go ahead and talk about it now. On Pat McAfee's show yesterday, Bill Belichick went on and just talked about the pre-draft process. Super good interview. I love Bill Belichick as a personality when he's not on the football field. Like, anytime he does an interview, it is incredible, incredible stuff. Super, super insightful guy. Love myself some Bill Belichick. But anyway, he came on yesterday. They asked him some questions, and they kind of just talked about, basically the question was phrased like, all right, Bill, for most of your time as a head coach and general manager, you picked towards the end of the first round. Like, basically, how early would you know that you wanted to move back, or basically the player that you wanted wouldn't be available there? And I mean, Bill Belichick basically came out and said, you really have no idea really until you're on the clock, essentially. He said, basically nothing that comes out before the draft means anything. He said, I would say that most of the news that comes out right now comes from players' agents. Those are the people who have the most kind of ties to what happens with their player's value. He says he can specifically remember telling an agent, like, yeah, we're eyeing your player in maybe the 2nd or 3rd round. And then that agent going around and telling people that they were looking at drafting him in the 1st. So he said, really do not put much into what you're hearing right now. He said the only time you'll hear anything actually factual come out about NFL draft rumors won't be until like 12 hours before the draft. He says at that point, that's when, when organizations have kind of, decided what they'll be picking, especially in the top order of the draft. But for now, not really to read too much into it. He says a lot of what's coming out now is coming from agents. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially when it comes from the JJ McCarthy side. We know McCarthy has a good agent, and we know that hype has kind of been building. So we'll see what it plays out. I loved hearing that tidbit from Bill Belichick because it does kind of make me, again, back to the Daniel Jeremiah takeaway about Jaden Daniels, him just saying that, Washington, if anyone says that they know what Washington is doing, they are lying. Even Washington doesn't know what they're doing right now. So just like right now, just because the odds seem to point towards Jaden Daniels being the favorite for the Commanders to pick does not necessarily mean that's what they're doing. And if anything, maybe it's just a smokescreen. It's just maybe a smokescreen. So very good insight there about Washington's plan, which I guess is also technically no insight at all. But I just think it's cool to see just kind of all of that work together from Bill Belichick to Daniel Jeremiah. And then next, he was kind of asked about who does he think will make a move, who will try to trade up in this draft. And interestingly enough, he actually talked about the Commanders looking to move up. He thinks that they will pick at number 2 and then use their second round picks. They have pick number 36 and pick number 40, so 2 fairly early second round picks. He says he could see them using those to move back up into the later half of the first round to try to get themselves some offensive line help. He identified the Steelers pick as one potential option, which I think makes a lot of sense for both teams. So I thought that was very cool. I don't think I've heard a lot of people mentioning that the Commanders would be looking to trade up in this draft, but I think that's a great move, and maybe they're taking it out of the Houston Texans playbook. We know they did that last year. They got CJ Stroud, and then they moved right back up to get their edge rusher. So I like that a lot. The other one they said could be making some moves is, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles, who basically make a draft day move every single year. He said that he could see them actually getting aggressive almost and trading up to draft a quarterback early, whether it be a Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell, which I think is very interesting. So I like that as well. And the last team he mentioned that he's keeping an eye on for a trade would be the Saints. He says that he could see the Saints moving up aggressively if the right offensive tackle is there. So they're either looking for a Fontenot or a Joe Alt or something, which I think is also very, very cool. So look to see if the Saints, Eagles, or Commanders move up. I think all 3 of those are definitely interesting insights. And I think all 3 I actually haven't heard many people talk about. You always hear the Broncos and the Vikings trading up, but I haven't really heard anyone say the Commanders. I thought that was very cool and something to keep our eye on for sure. The third thing he was asked is, will the Jets jump at pass catcher? And he basically said yes. He said there is a chaos scenario where the Jets might move up to, say, number 8 with the Falcons. If Rome Odunze is still available, they would jump the Jets, or the Jets would jump the Bears to get Rome Odunze if he's still available. But he also said at pick 10, he could see them staying and picking either Brock Bowers, Fuaga out of Oregon State, or Troy Fontenot if they're all available. He said that Bowers might be too tempting for the Jets to pass up. My gut tells me I think they would take Bowers. Douglas comes from an organization in Baltimore where they had great tight ends, and they've always done a good job of drafting tight ends. I like their tight end room now. Tyler Conklin's solid, but Bowers would give them a little something different. So hearing that the Jets are tied to Brock Bowers is very, very interesting. That is something that we've seen mocked a lot. And, I think is not a bad landing spot at all. I think that would help the Jets, and I think that would be a pretty good landing spot for Brock Bowers. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think that would be that bad. The next question was, where will JJ McCarthy land? And basically he said, I would be shocked if JJ McCarthy goes beyond the 12th pick. That's the Denver Broncos pick. As you guys know, I'm firmly in the camp that I think it's the Broncos that want JJ McCarthy, not the Vikings. But either way, he did also say that the Vikings are in a better position to move up as well. But basically said that the Vikings have a better shot of getting there, but he thinks that either way, either the Vikings or the Broncos will be picking JJ McCarthy, and he will be picked inside the top 12, which I think is different, right? We've been hearing top 5. It's very reassuring and comforting to hear one analyst, especially an insider like Daniel Jeremiah, to say top 12. I think that that's a lot more reasonable and something to keep your eye on as well. So look for JJ McCarthy to go to the Vikings or Broncos, and hopefully the Broncos. I like that a lot. He goes on to say it's functional and thinks that a quarterback would do well there. And then finally, he was kind of asked who he thinks might be the biggest riser on draft day. And he says Texas defensive tackle Byron Murphy. He says that he could see him slipping inside the top 10, actually, which I think is very surprising. Not many people are talking about that at all. But he just said that it basically in a post-Aaron Donald NFL, the top-tier defensive tackles are going to be sought after, and he loves Byron Murphy. He also said that right now he has Chop Robinson as his 21st overall player, but would not be surprised if he goes inside the top 15 as well, which is another player that's kind of been mocked all over the place from end of the first round to middle of the first. To hear him say that he thinks he could even go as high as pick 11, I think is very shocking. So that's the Daniel Jeremiah insight. The Commanders are not in on Jaden Daniels as you might think. The Commanders might also be moving up along with the Saints and Eagles. The Jets are looking at a pass catcher, whether it be a Dunsey or Brock Bowers. JJ McCarthy will be going top 12 to the Broncos or the Vikings. And one of the biggest risers in the draft will be Texas defensive tackle Byron Murphy. So I have basically discussed everything rookie-wise. I did just want to mention again about the Bill Belichick, Pat McAfee thing. Definitely go check that out. It's only about 30-something minutes. But also next Thursday, he will also be doing a draft coverage stream. So I'm sure there'll be a ton to glean from Bill Belichick's coverage on the NFL draft next week as well. But you probably won't be watching that because you're going to be watching Player Profiler. Let's go. So anyway, that is everything I have for you guys. Let's go ahead and pop into the chat, see if we have any questions. I see one right here. 15th round on underdog, Roschon Johnson or Keaton Mitchell. I would just say neither, to be honest, unless you have Derrick Henry or DeAndre Swift, then you can go to get their backup. But I would probably just take a dart throw on a wide receiver here, like a Brendan Rice, a Roman Wilson, one of these rookie wide receivers that is usually hanging around here, maybe a tight end or something. But I don't think I'm going handcuff running back here unless I have one of those starters. If the Colts or Bears draft Bowers, should Woods and Kmet be dropped? I would be very surprised if the Bears draft Brock Bowers. So I don't think that's a scenario at all. The Colts, though, are definitely one that I'm worried about. I would not say Jelani Woods becomes droppable just because there's not a lot of pass catchers there, really, and I could still see him being a red zone threat. Well, I guess he would be droppable in one tight end leagues, but in like tight end premium, 2 tight end leagues, you'd probably hold on to Jelani Woods. But yeah, his value would completely plummet with Brock Bowers, and I'm really hoping that doesn't happen as a Jelani Woods fan. Love myself some Jelani. Hope they don't get Bowers. I hope he goes to the Jets or the Bengals. I like the Bengals spot a lot, but it's looking like they'll have to move up to make that happen. So let me check real quick Instagram, but I think that is it for all the questions. Yes. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. If you struggle to make it live sometimes and you want to make sure you can listen to Wake and Take all the time, we do have a podcast. The link for the Wake and Take podcast is in the description, so make sure you go subscribe to that. But also like this video and subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel and hit that bell so you get notified when we go live. I'll be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm feeling a rookie tier list. I'm feeling like making a little bit of a tier list tomorrow. So make sure you tune into that episode where we'll be talking even more on rookies, gearing up for the NFL draft. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. You have a terrific Thursday and a fantastic rest of your week. Peace.